Hello and welcome to another episode of Global Tantrum. As always, I am your host, Steve Pally. With me, as always, is my co-host, Professor Galen Jackson. Galen, you had a bad head cold last week, so we didn't record, but you're looking in fine fettle today, my friend.
Yeah, despite having to shovel my driveway for a cumulative total of something in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 hours, which
Wow.
is not a ringing endorsement for the purchase of Greenland, I gotta tell you.
Oh man, yeah, you already gave away the headline here. That's cool. Yeah, so most of the country is locked in a deep freeze, including your part of the country. My part of the country is operating at a smooth 80 degrees Fahrenheit.
I think last I checked, it's like -3 as of now. So,
Okay, let's hope that you've got plenty of propane stocked up or whatever it is you people do over there. Yeah, we're gonna go someplace even colder for this episode. We're gonna go to Greenland to delve into the goings on over there.
Yeah, I guess one silver lining of this period we're living through is it does force us to learn about things that I haven't thought about since I was doing like second grade geography.
Yes.
So we learned that the capital of Greenland is Nuke.
Yes.
You know, so
And we'll discuss why that's thematically appropriate when it comes to Greenland's history. Yeah, so let's set the table for this crazy episode that we're going to do because the month of January has been preoccupied with Greenlandic affairs, which have not been a going concern for many decades, many decades. The month started off with Trump starting to tweet or truth, I'm not exactly sure which, but basically make aggressive noises about the need for the United States to own Greenland, extend sovereignty over Greenland in a direct and real way. And things kind of went downhill from there. And by the way, this is not the first time Trump has floated this. He floated it back in 2019 as a trial balloon. The prime minister of Denmark at that time. So Greenland is a autonomous home governed region of Denmark, as I understand it, but it is a Danish territory. Anyway, the PM of Denmark at that time was kind of like, haha, that's not funny, but okay, weird. Anyway, Trump left office. He came back earlier last year in 2025. He started making noises again, but was preoccupied by other matters for most of 2025, including tariffs, Iran, Gaza, Venezuela, all the stuff we've been talking about on this show. January, the dance card cleared up a little bit, I guess, and we went back to Greenland.
new year, new priorities.
That's right. Just in time for Davos in Switzerland, which is like the big, geopolitical meeting of the G7, the G20,
Yeah,
all the central bankers.
in the interest of full disclosure, the whole Davos thing bugs the shit out of me. It just seems like a giant get together of narcissists talking about how awesome they are. But this year,
Yep.
some important things happened. So
Some important things happened. We'll get to that. And so basically, Trump made threatening noises up to and including going to Davos and sort of obliquely, like threatening to use force.
yeah.
People like Stephen Miller said that the international system is governed by absolute power and nobody could possibly resist
And Trump
the
said like we could do this the hard way,
yes,
something.
the
Yeah.
easy way or the hard way. We could use overwhelming force and nobody could stop us, but I won't do that. Like that type of thing, right? So Denmark refused to back down, and many of Denmark's NATO allies stepped up to Denmark's defense, including the UK, including France, including I believe Poland, perhaps. I'm not exactly sure, but they basically rose to Denmark's defense within the framework of NATO. And we'll talk about why NATO is involved here. It's been involved in Greenland for a very long time, as it turns out. And up to and including the EU, the European Union, beginning to invoke what's called its anti-coercion instrument, which is its own like tariff bazooka, basically, which would have been a major escalation in trade tensions between the US and the European Union. And when it comes to trade, the EU cannot be messed with. It's very big and very powerful. So Trump actually backed down. And after a call with the head of NATO, right, Galen?
Yeah, Mark Rutte,
Yes.
who I'm not sure any single news item has bothered me more in recent years than him referring to Trump as daddy for all sorts of reasons.
Anyway, he called daddy up on the phone and they had a quick conversation and established a framework for increasing US, Danish, Greenlandic, and NATO cooperation in this area of the world. And last we heard, Trump has passed this off to JD Vance and Rubio for technical discussions about what this would actually mean. But he seems satisfied for now. It remains to be seen if he will stay satisfied. This could burst back into open flame very quickly and, in fact, burn down NATO, which is why we need to talk about it, right?
Yeah, not on my bingo card.
Nope. Nope.
But maybe what we should do, because you and I agree that somewhat to our mutual surprise, there are some legitimate reasons for the United States and NATO to be interested in Greenland in a
Absolutely.
serious way. So why don't maybe we document some of the relevant history and then why Trump seems to be doing this and how he might have gone about it differently to achieve better results.
He could have gone about it very differently. I like that. I like that plan. You want to kick us off with that?
Sure. So the US actually has sort of a lengthy interest in the acquisition of Greenland.
Mm-hmm.
The first instance that I'm aware of, I think Denmark has ruled Greenland for about 300 years now, something like that. To my surprise, the Danes actually first floated the idea of a sale to the United States in the years right before World War One.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, for kind of a combination of financial reasons, and I can never remember the different 19th century European wars at this point, but the one where the Germans took Schleswig from Denmark.
One of the wars of German unification.
Was it the War of Austrian Succession, something like that? Anyway, there was
Yeah, it
like
was courtesy of Bismarck. We can be confident of
yeah,
that.
there's like all these different horse trades that the Danes had in mind, like we'll give you what was then the Danish Antilles, now the U.S. Virgin Islands, which the United
Mm,
States wanted because of its proximity to the Panama Canal. And in exchange, like the United States would part ways with some of the Philippines, which Denmark could then trade to Germany in return for Schleswig. Anyway, ultimately, the Wilson administration was not interested in doing this. So actually, this was maybe a chance where the U.S. could have purchased Greenland and decided didn't want to. The more significant one comes right after the Second World War,
right.
because Greenland, I wouldn't say it was a hugely significant piece of the strategic puzzle, but did play a certain role in helping bottle up the German Navy, so winning the Battle of the Atlantic. Germany actually, for a time after it conquered Denmark, had a meteorological station within Greenland that had a certain effect on battle planning within Europe. Ultimately, what ended up happening during the war was the Danish ambassador in Washington signed an agreement with the United States, basically giving the US the right to station military forces and build bases there, which his government disavowed because it was under Nazi occupation. But the United States and the Allies went in, got the Germans who were resident at that time in Greenland out. And so, right after the war, with the emergence of the Cold War, the Joint Chiefs of Staff sort of see it as a key strategic piece of the chessboard as the competition with the Soviet Union is heating up. And the Truman administration in 1946 actually offers the Danish government $100 million in gold, which I think today is somewhere north of $1 billion, something like a
Correct.
$1.5 billion, something like that.
Yep.
Um, so it's kind of already got this history of being a strategic puzzle piece with the Cold War heating up. The issue is that this isn't a very popular idea within Denmark. There's some concern, by the way, that if the US kind of leverages pressure on Copenhagen. That could actually help the Danish communists. This is right before the Marshall Plan. That's the main
Mm.
concern, is the rise of communist parties in Western Europe. So after Marshall becomes Secretary of State, essentially what happens is the Americans say, okay, this will kind of be counterproductive to like really put serious pressure on Denmark to cede Greenland to the United States. So there's some complex negotiations that go on that lead to an agreement in 1951,
Hmm.
which for the purposes of what we're talking about today is a key agreement. There's various details we could get into. For my money, the thing to focus on is that it basically gives practically the United States everything that it needs
Hmm.
when it comes to Greenland. It has sort of unfettered military access. It can set up military bases, station troops there, use ports, kind of whatever it needs to. I found one quote from a researcher on this topic saying, I have a very hard time seeing that the US couldn't get pretty much everything it wanted if it just asks nicely.
Hmm.
It
Which we didn't
base
do, but we'll get
correct
to that.
basically just has to like inform the governments of Greenland and Denmark that the United States is going to set up military installations in the area for strategic purposes. By the way, both of those places have welcomed a US military presence in the past. And during the Cold War, the United States had something like a dozen military bases stationed in the area. I think there was a revision to the agreement in 2004 that basically
Hmm.
says the United States kind of has to like take the preferences of the local population into account, and that these military bases won't kind of be an impediment to local residents. But beyond that, the US sort of is able to do whatever it needs to do in Greenland. We'll get to some of the obstacles when it comes to purchasing it or using military force to take it. But I think the key takeaway here is like the United States could already do, if it's actually concerned about national security, and we'll talk about some of the legitimate reasons why this is a strategic priority for the administration for legitimate reasons. It kind of could do that already based on this 1951 agreement.
Yeah, it absolutely could. And yeah, so I believe the number is they had up to 17 military bases at one point in time during the course of the Cold War. And those bases were there for two main reasons. One is to control what's called the GI-UK gap, G being Greenland, I being Iceland, and the UK being the UK, specifically, I think the Faroe Islands. And if you look out at a map and you think about Russia and the Russia Northern Fleet, which comes out of an Arctic port called Archangельsk, I believe, in the far frozen north of Russia, right? And goes into the Arctic Sea and then comes down south into the Atlantic. It has to go past these choke points between Greenland and Iceland and between Iceland and the UK. And if NATO controls those choke points, then it can really effectively bottle up that northern fleet. And Russia has big problems projecting naval power into the Atlantic during the Cold War. And in fact, after the Cold War today, it's
And
still
if I'm
significant.
not mistaken, I think that port was a destination for Lend-Lease aid during World War II as well.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it may very well have been. And like in World War II, this is relevant for the U-boat campaign in the Atlantic.
right.
Um, so, it helped win the Battle of the Atlantic, as you said. Now, Russia was an enemy during the Cold War, and then it took a break for about 20 years of being an enemy, more or less. And now it's back to being an enemy and trying to project power around the world. So it is actually important that we're able to do something about that on the naval side of things. That's one hand. The other hand is actually NORAD. And NORAD is what's the acronym? I can't remember what the acronym is.
I can't either. Oh man,
All
it's
right, time to
bad.
look it up. Time to
Yeah,
look it up.
I'll do it. You keep talking.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, NORAD is the North American organization between the US and Canada that effectively monitors for the beginning of World War III against.
It's the North American Aerospace Defense Command.
Okay, got it.
Sorry.
But for some reason, it's like NO
Yeah.
instead of NARAD. It's NORAD. Yeah. Anyway, NORAD sounds better. I get it. During the Cold War, basically World War III would have kicked off because of the geography. The shortest distance to the US and Canada is actually over the Arctic Circle from the Soviet Union. They would have launched over the Arctic to get those missiles to their American targets faster. So we had early warning radar in Canada, in Alaska, and in Greenland, among other places, as I understand it. And that was a pretty important part, being able to pick up those launches and those trajectories as fast as possible so we could launch our stuff and annihilate all civilization and maybe even life on Earth as quickly as possible. But that was World War III, right? So,
We've already covered that. So
yes, indeed we have. And that remains a going concern, by the way. In
if
fact,
you buy missile defense, which I remain a skeptic at this point, but
as do I.
you never know, I guess. Maybe the next $100 billion leads to the breakthrough, but there's concern or there's an interest that Greenland could be pretty critical in setting up things like interceptors for Trump's Golden Dome proposal.
The Golden Dome system, right? Which is the new iteration of missile defense or strategic defense or whatever you want to call it, right? We've had this idea for many years in many different guises. This is the new one, and it's multi-layered, and it's based at least partly on Israeli technology, as I understand it. But yeah, the idea is like Greenland is an important part of this, and we need to make sure that it is secure from Russian and even Chinese activity. So that's also where this is coming from. And again, like you have to subscribe to the notion that missile defense is A, possible, B, a good idea to pursue. And those are two different questions that are related. We won't get into that here. Maybe we'll do it some other episode.
Point on the I'll just say the GI UK gap. Like
Yes.
the concern there is similar to what the Truman people were thinking after World War II, which is like ultimately what the United States decides it can live with is it just wants to keep Greenland out of enemy hands.
Yep.
And so to the extent that this relates to the idea of keeping, Russian and Chinese influence out of that area, and then the corresponding advantages of bottling up the Russian Navy and keeping it out of the Atlantic, that those are legitimate, military strategic concerns, even if you
Yeah.
leave aside missile defense stuff.
And not only that, they've been legitimate concerns for decades, right? It's this is not something that Trump is making up by himself by any stretch of the imagination. And I was like surprised to learn that the Danes, I just learned earlier in this episode, the Danes tried to sell us Greenland a long time ago, like over a century ago. And then Truman offered to buy it, right? So like this isn't coming from nowhere. This actually has a historical legacy behind it. Trump isn't making it up. The way he's doing it is, shall we say, idiosyncratic, but there are reasons for it. A third reason involves rare earth minerals. So Greenland has huge deposits of these rare earths, but there's some major issues with actually being able to recover and mine those rare earths. Rare earths are super important because that's how we make the super powerful magnets that go into large parts of modern technology, including our fighter jets and electric cars and things like that.
Yeah, we should do an episode on that.
On rare earths and get
Yeah.
somebody who's an expert on rare earths. I
Yeah.
don't necessarily know any, but I'm
We'll
sure we
fig-
could find one.
we'll figure it out there.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Anyway, Greenland's super cold. It's hard to mine there. Plus, there are environmental concerns. The main mining project in Greenland was shut down by a previous government. I don't know if it's been restarted. The real issue, though, is yes, we could perhaps mine those rare earths in Greenland or any place else, but China controls 90% of the refining capability for rare earth minerals. So we'd have to build out the refinement capacity, and that is a matter of probably several decades. So this is a more long-term consideration, but it is an important consideration.
Yeah, there are completely understandable reasons people are focused on this issue right now as China has weaponized its total dominance of that
Mm-hmm.
sector that, as you said, so much of the world economy, including strategic and military technologies, rely upon. And we saw Trump trying to sign a deal with Ukraine on this last
Mm-hmm.
year. I frankly don't know what the status of that agreement is, given how unsettled the situation in Eastern Europe is.
I don't know
The
that Ukraine knows what the status
Yeah,
is.
fair enough. I know the Europeans were looking to Rwanda on this, which is not, for a whole bunch of reasons, a great bet necessarily. But like focus, like Greenland, yes, it has deposits of these things in large amounts. But as you said, it's not a great place to be going after them. There's very little road network, for example.
Hmm.
Machinery operating in those kinds of conditions does not work very well.
Hmm.
Western labor standards are going to make it even more expensive to mine these things. And the environmental opposition in Greenland, I understand, is immense. And so this is a story littered with examples of investments in this sector that have not gone well. Um, and as you said, the biggest thing is the refining piece. Like that, in some ways, accounts more than anything for China's stranglehold in that area. So it's a reason. I don't know how good of a reason it is. The other ones that I came up with for why he might be doing this is just like a classical preoccupation with the Western Hemisphere,
Hmm.
as we discussed with the national security strategy.
Yes.
Uh, and, frankly, I don't rule out at all. In some ways, I find it the most convincing that he just wants to put his name on this and be like William Seward with Alaska and be like, I
Which
got,
was,
I got Greenland.
yeah, which was originally called Seward's Folly, by the way. And Alaska, like Americans weren't necessarily that happy about Alaska for quite a while,
Well,
as I
maybe
understand
maybe
it.
that's what he's banking on. I don't know, because now it's
Yeah.
considered a great success, 2 cents an acre.
Yeah, so now we're getting into we're getting past the reasons for why the U.S. might want tighter control of Greenland, and there are two like pretty good ones and one kind of like more questionable one that's more long term. Although if you squint and say like, well, Greenland's going to melt, at some point, it's like okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a little bit more sense, and maybe we'll have the refining capacity by then. But then you come to understand that under the terms of this 1951 agreement, amended in 2004, we could just reopen all of those military bases and we could set up missile defense. We could do whatever we want. The Danes and the Greenlanders, well, the Danes would probably be happy about it,
Yeah.
honestly. The Greenlanders might be too, because it would generate a lot of economic activity. So, why do we think Trump did it the way he did?
Well,
Why do we?
one other, like, by the way, the rare earth thing, like, it seems like they're willing to do business with the United States if it wants
Absolutely.
to go about it the right way as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So why did Trump go about it the way that he did, making like these insinuations and threats on social media and then like directly in front of leaders at Davos in Switzerland? Like what explains that?
I will. Well, this is not going to be a necessarily coherent answer, but I think
Mm,
that's fair because I think trying to analyze the behavior of Donald Trump often leads to incoherence. Uh,
yes,
Look, the best reason that I can come up with in terms of the timing of it is the proximity to the Venezuelan operation,
I see.
which I think they, for now, consider a great success,
Mm,
like a surgical use of force. As we've discussed on the show, for now, that seems to be going okay, although there's a lot to that story left. And so maybe it was like, okay, that worked. Let's reload the shotgun and
get
get,
more while I'm
yeah.
riding high.
The other thing here, which I don't necessarily know if it's directly linked in a coherent way, but chronologically there's a connection, is this letter he wrote to the Norwegian government,
Oh yeah.
basically saying, like, since you guys didn't give me a Nobel Peace Prize, now worth noting, by the way, that the Norwegian government does not award the Nobel Peace Prize, but neither here nor there. Basically, like, since you didn't give it to me, like, I'm done with pursuing peace, and now I'm all about America first. And this
Okay.
this is his manifestation of that.
Right.
Um,
How about
I
this
I
one?
think he's attracted to the spheres of influence idea.
Yes, certainly.
And he thinks Greenland is within the U.S. sphere of influence, and owning it is different than not owning it, but having whatever you need from it.
Yeah.
None of these are like good reasons, and frankly, I'm not totally sure that any of them are accurate. But you're asking me to explain something that I find inexplicable.
Yeah, that's hard to explain. Absolutely. So there's another reason which you kind of alluded to. Trump really obviously dislikes Europeans, the European Union, and NATO. And so this is also a convenient opportunity to express his dislike and perhaps damage or destroy those institutions. Is that something we think is a good idea? Not necessarily, but from like if the policy is to do away with NATO and the European Union and to dominate Europe, right? And some of that is actually in the national security strategy. Although it regards NATO as a going concern, right? There's this sense of open contempt from the administration. Maybe that has something to do with it, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, like we've talked before about like there are certain things about his policy that have are legitimate grounds for discussion and have been legitimate grounds for discussion for years and years and years, right? Like he
Mm-hmm.
is he is by no means the first American president to complain about NATO's lack of military spending and free riding, right? Like he
They all
is
do.
correct. And if you want to talk about a different looking NATO, I'm actually quite open to that. I can't make sense of just like the utter disdain and hostility toward Europe.
Yeah.
That's not something that makes sense to me as just a place to start from or a point of departure
Well, so
when
I think
making
it's
policy.
it's a lot more ideological than pragmatic. Let's put it that way. And yeah, there's no question that this administration has certain ideological predilections, shall we say, and it uses real resources to underwrite those, including diplomatic credit and goodwill, right?
Look,
Which,
of the things we've said, I find what you just said the most compelling explanation for like the broad sweep of policy, which is,
yeah.
turning much of traditional US foreign policy, at least as it's existed since 1945, on its head. Like
Hmm.
we don't like you liberal Democrats.
Yeah,
Like
right.
whether that's what's going on, I couldn't tell you.
And to do it in such a way that it cannot be repaired
Yeah.
at a later date. And I think we should talk about that as
Well,
well.
that mirrors much of what they do domestically as well, right? Like
Yep.
you do things irreversibly such that you don't have to worry about them when there's a change in administration.
You destroy the institutions, you destroy the norms and the trust. And at Davos, it became clear that the rest of the free world, including Europe and Canada, right, no longer trust the United States to do the right thing. And Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney came out with a speech and basically said out loud what everybody has been thinking. And I'm paraphrasing here. It's one of the best and most important speeches of this type, honestly, of this century so far, in my opinion. And he came forward and said the United States is no longer leading. It is now effectively predating.
And
And
he conspicuous like I think there were only a few times in the speech where he actually referred to the United States.
yes,
And he
but
he
everybody
referred
knew what he
correct,
was talking about.
but he referred to the hegemon and the
Yes.
hegemons or the great powers, I think, to highlight the degree to which like that is now how much of the world conceives of US foreign policy as nakedly powerful, right? Like not,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah. No longer interested in self restraint for the purposes of self interest, more interested in getting whatever it can from friend and foe alike. And under these circumstances, Carney went on to say the middle powers need to band together because if they don't, they will be on the menu separately. It's basically what he said.
And
And you got to,
notably, he immediately went to Beijing and met with Xi Jinping as a
yeah.
counterweight, which
And he,
is
he,
kind of
he went on,
remarkable.
he basically raised his hand and said, Canada is ready to lead. We maintain liberal values here. We have our own strengths. We're not scared of our neighbor to the south because Trump heard this speech, didn't like it, and then threatened Carney. He said Canada exists by the forbearance of the United States. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he said. And Carney shot back Canada exists because of Canadians, not because of the United States.
Yeah, and
So,
just, to to carve out a space for people like myself who don't like ideology and foreign policy in general. If you didn't want to come at it from that angle, there was still another way for the United States to go about altering its overall foreign policy orientation that didn't involve burning down everything and turning traditionally friendly countries into potential
into
rivals.
into
Uh,
enemies. Yeah.
there are other ways of doing it that are just non-ideological. Like, to me, the thing that's most puzzling about this approach is that it's gratuitously self-harmful. Like,
Yes.
we can debate what the correct policy is and how much the United States should be involved in holding up the world order and so on and so forth. These are just own goals for no reason, like
Yeah.
gratuitous own goals.
Well, so I think one reason is individual psychology, right? Because we're very much playing in that field now with the way this administration does business. It's about one guy and what he thinks and feels at any given time in a way that just hasn't been the case for a very long time in this country. Two is again, I think the desire for making making this irretrievable and irreversible and like really putting a exclamation point on it to
To
make sure that happens, right?
But to what end? Purely for ideological purposes? Like,
Yes. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Making sure that when the Democrats get back into power or whatever, the MAGA revolution is reversed or, however you want to say it, it's like making sure that the Europeans will never trust the United States again, you
well,
know?
I think that box has been checked.
Yeah, I think so. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you feel about this stuff. Again, I believe the United States is stronger within the framework of NATO and with Europeans as allies. But like within the next decade, the Europeans are going to rearm and we're going to see whether or not this was a good idea when
We
it comes
are.
to, yeah, because
You
they may
know,
not stay aligned with the United States.
it's also, to me, it's somewhat remarkable. I remember there was an article in Foreign Affairs written in early 2021, I think by Jonathan Kirshner, prominent IR scholar,
Yeah.
who basically said, all right, like, you know, the Democrats won the election, Biden is the new president. Like, the damage has been done,
Yeah.
because of Trump's first term, because of January 6th, and because I forget what the exact numbers were, but something like 75 million Americans voted for Trump in that election.
Hmm.
Somewhat to my surprise, the US was given another shot.
The Europeans did not increase their military budgets at
Yeah, and
that point in
like,
time.
yeah, but like beyond that, right? Like, there was not a fundamental reorientation away
No,
from the United States. Like, and the US has taken that second chance and made sure that there will never be another one, or
that's
maybe
it.
never is too long, but not for the
Yeah.
foreseeable future.
Not for the
Uh,
foreseeable future. Certainly past, this administration. If we get President Newsom or President AOC or whatever, they're not going to be able to go back to the EU or the individual Europeans and be like, "Hey, we're back, baby." They're going to be like, "Okay, what about the next election?"
and
They're
I
going to get,
actually viewed this Carney speech not as like the opening of a new chapter. I viewed it as like the nail in the coffin of something that I think we've all known for a good period of time now. There was this article that came out which I liked. The term, maybe you might know this since you know some people that work in tech, in shitification.
"Oh yes, absolutely,
Okay.
yeah, that's Cory Doctorow."
Okay. Well, this was an article written by Stacy Goddard and Abraham Newman.
Okay.
I think it was in Wired. So in shitification, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like you have a tech product that's initially pretty sweet, and then once you've collected enough customers, like, it turns into shit because like you've got people into it, and so you don't actually have to provide the service in a way
Yeah,
that's
that's the high level idea. It's like, okay, we offered this for free and we got a monopoly, right? So now everybody's hooked on this and there's no alternatives. And now we're just going to start squeezing
yeah.
to make money, right? And
And
making everything worse and like filling it with ads and exploiting users. And yeah, That's the idea.
Well, so this article they wrote basically is like the American world order has undergone in shitification. Like the US has, provided all these things, like, the dollar being the reserve currency. Yes, that has been advantageous to the United States, of course,
Yeah.
but like it has been advantageous
If we lose
to,
that one, we're going to see exactly how advantageous that's
well,
been.
right. But like it has also been good for the global economy
Sure.
overall. And like
Yeah.
a number of other, whether you want to call them public goods or things the United States has done, like those things are now being used purely for naked self-interest on the part of the United States. And I think one thing Carney is gesturing at in that speech is like, it's time to get away from US products and US institutions and so on, because like they're shitty now.
Yep.
And like we need
Yep.
to find our own path, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody leave Facebook and Instagram and go to something else, Blue Sky, right? Or whatever the alternative is. There is no alternative to your point. Yeah, this could be regarded as a final nail in the coffin because we don't know what comes next. And like Carney's maybe going to work with the Europeans to try to build something. Who knows?
Well, it's
Maybe he'll be
interesting
able to.
because the other potential powers are not attractive either, right? Like I don't think the Europeans are chomping at the bit to line up with Beijing. We
No,
know we know they're not chomping at the bit to line up with Moscow.
no,
Um,
at least not yet. I mean, if some of these illiberal parties take power,
yeah,
who knows?
anything's possible.
Yeah.
But like it's this situation now where there isn't alignment really with any of the powers, the major powers going forward. I mean, should we talk about like how Trump could have gone about doing Greenland seriously?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, why don't you take a stab at it? Because I feel like mine's pretty simple.
Mine's
Like,
mine's probably the same as yours, which
okay.
is just like we're gonna reopen all those military
Yeah.
bases.
Okay.
Yeah, and like we'll consult with NATO and Denmark and Greenland, and like everybody's happy if we do that because again, the Greenlanders get more economic activity. Denmark gets to protect Greenland using the American shield. NATO gets to continue to keep Russia out of the Atlantic. Like this is all good stuff and everybody's happy, but Trump doesn't seem that interested in making everybody happy. He's not interested in win-wins. He's interested in like win-lose. And it's important to him that somebody loses when he wins. That's what seems to be going on here. Like that seems to be like a major operating principle of how he does business. And that's unfortunate, but it would explain what's happening, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the individual level explanation is, and frankly, I don't want to try to get into his head. I have enough of my own issues internally to deal with.
Fair enough.
But like, I think I generally am not really into, those simple of explanations. In this case, I think it kind of makes sense. Like, I think I
Yeah.
heard someone say he's a real estate guy. He sees
Yeah.
Greenland as real estate. I'm like, yeah, I think maybe there's something to that.
Yeah. It
I
looks
think,
big on a map.
yeah. Well, so like, that I think is the one explanation that stands out to me as like crude and unsophisticated as it is. It's a
Yeah.
big chunk of territory, and he wants to be recorded in American history along with like Jefferson and the Louisiana Purchase and Polk and the Mexican War and Seward and Alaska.
Yeah, I think Trump will certainly get his own pages in the history books. Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. Now, what those pages say remains to be seen. All right, so we have left this with the Greenlanders scared. They're like actually scared. The Americans in talks with Denmark and NATO. Trump, at least moment for the time being, quiescent, and the NATO alliance irretrievably damaged. Does that sound about right as a summary?
I'm
All of this
thinking
comes,
I'm
yeah,
thinking about NATO being irretrievably. I mean, okay, damaged, yes. Like,
yes, irretrievable, maybe not. I mean, all this is
well, no,
going
no, no,
down.
no. Like, I agree with even that. I'm like
Yeah,
collapsed, not yet.
not yet. No,
But
it like I one thing I forgot to say is all this is going down when we're like working on a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia, and the US and the Europeans are trying to cooperate on that. So it's like we're trying to like push that over the finish line on the one hand while getting into a fist fight over Greenland on the other hand.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. It would seem to make the job harder in Ukraine.
Yeah. I don't really have anything else to add. I just want to make one more point, which might be an obvious one, but I think it bears repeating. Like, Trump backed down on this in the face of pretty much unified opposition
Mm-hmm.
from most of Washington's traditional allies. There's also basically no support among Americans to use military force to take Greenland.
We should talk about that. Yep.
There is, I think you said, a majority of Americans don't want to purchase it.
Also true.
And they may not realize that it's not for sale. So perhaps
Yes.
that slim majority is actually, if you asked, knowing that it's not for sale, do you want to buy it? That number would be even higher. He
Yeah.
does respond to political opposition. Like we're
Yeah.
sort of seeing that now with the somewhat of a retreat on ICE enforcement in Minneapolis.
Correct.
And there is a lesson in there that
Mm-hmm.
if the politics, I mean, for my money, that's the best explanation of his behavior in general. If the politics are not in his favor, he changes course. And
I also don't think Americans like the idea of taking over a place by force where people don't want them. And Greenlanders pretty much unanimously do not want to be any part of the United States. They do want to be independent from Denmark, and then that may happen at some point, but they want independence. They don't want to join the US. There's like 95% against becoming a part of the United States. I would imagine that'll go to 100% at this point. So it's like, how much appetite do we have for going over there and establishing a colony by force?
I don't think a lot. I mean,
zero.
Even
close
even
to
the
zero.
Venezuela stuff, right? Like it would have been a completely different story if we were talking about a major military operation with boots on the ground.
Exactly. So yeah, as erratic as Trump can be, I think you're right. It's like he has a sense of his own political survival, and he needs to try to win the midterms, right? Otherwise, he's going to start getting impeached again, and yeah, there's all of that stuff, right? So yeah, there's political considerations in play, and he does pay attention to that, which I think is a good thing. It's kind of important. If he didn't like order the military to storm Greenland, then I don't even know what would happen next.
And look, I, as a matter of policy, do not make predictions about American elections
Yeah,
because, like, I think Trump is in a precarious political position at the moment.
he certainly is.
On the other hand, his adversary is the Democratic Party, and they find all sorts of ways of shooting themselves in the foot and losing
Mm-hmm.
elections they should win. But for the moment, the picture politically is not looking good for him. And so
Yeah.
adding this to his stack of problems, I think he understands is not in his own political interests. So I suspect, if I'm making a prediction, that whatever this framework is more or less going to reiterate agreements that already existed, and we will have had this crisis over pretty much nothing.
You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of the renegotiation of NAFTA,
Yeah.
which was just like, okay, we're going to call it something else, and it's like there are a few changes, but like it's basically the same thing. And by the way, that's up for renewal, and second time around might not go quite as smoothly. Starting later this year, maybe we'll get to that in a later episode. But yeah, it's like it's crazy that Greenland became the center of world affairs in
I have
January of
no idea
2026.
what we're going to talk about next week. Like,
And that's what makes it so much fun.
It could be anything.
It could be anything. It could be anything. It could be Madagascar. It could be Antarctica.
It's
Who
funny you
knows?
said that. I was literally thinking Madagascar. So
Yeah, it's like let's think of we went to the same place, like the most obscure place we could think of, Outer Mongolia,
yeah.
the moon. Who knows? Awesome. All right. Well, this has been Global Tantrum. If you like what we do, remember to review, like, subscribe, share, do all that stuff. Even if you don't like what we do, tell us that. That's fine. And we will talk to you next time. Thanks, Galen.
Thanks, man.